Céad Míle Fáilte. Well, episode 8, that last in our series on Lú, is finally out. Sorry for the long delay, but this last story, the Battle of Moytura, has always been my favorite. It required a lot of compiling of different versions, dollops of personal imbus, and a fair amount of recording, re-recording, and editing. So we hope you enjoy the result. For this episode's highlighted charity, we wanted to draw your attention to Conradh na Gaeilge, or the Gaelic League. Conradh na Gaeilge is one of the foremost voices in Ireland for the protection and promotion of the Irish language and the people of the Gaeltacht. They offer services like free legal advice, classes on the Irish language from the beginning speaker to the advanced. They encourage voter participation in the Gaeltacht, promote Irish arts and literature and music, teach Irish to Catholic and Protestant alike in Northern Ireland, and keep an eye on current legislation that may affect the future of the Irish language. In return for the gift of these stories, I consider it the least I can do to give back to the culture that gave them birth. I encourage you to do the same. I will place a link to their donate page below the YouTube video and in the show notes for the podcast. So, without further delay, too late, let's get to the last story in our series on Lú, the story of Moytura. So, Lú Lámhfada had gained his education with Manannán mac Lir in Áhuinúlach. But while he was away, time didn't stand still for the Tuireadh. A pall of darkness had settled over the green hills of Ireland. The stars had been lost behind the mists of despair. The sea had grown grey and uneasy along her shores. And perhaps most devastating of all, the music of the Sidhe had grown silent, for the terrible and ancient Fómhoraigh had taken away the harp of the Daghdha. And because the Tuireadh no longer possessed this harp, the seasons no longer moved in their proper order. The weather had grown chaotic, with winter appearing in summer and fall appearing in spring. But this wasn't their only problem. As people often do when they are uncertain, they argued. The noble Tuireadh, the people of peace, began to murmur against each other in whispered voices. You will remember that during the battle with the Fómhoraigh, Nua had lost his hand in his fight with Sreng. It is a custom among the fairy people that the king of the Sidhe becomes the husband to the land herself, the beautiful and captivating Lady Ériú. To please her, the king must be beautiful, strong, and without blemish. After losing his hand, Nua had a blemish and could no longer be king. So after a long and contentious debate, the Tuireadh decided it would be best for Nua to give kingship to the young and handsome Bress. Bress was a truly beautiful young man, and it was all but guaranteed that he would be loved by the land herself, Ériú. For you see, Ériú was his mother. Only one doubt gnawed at the minds of the Tuireadh. None of them knew who Bress's father was, or from where he had come. Only Ériú herself knew that. Years earlier, the goddess Ériú looked out one fine day over the sea from Moytura, and she beheld a wonder. The sea became perfectly calm, as if it had become a mirror of shining silver. Ériú was awestruck by the strange beauty of it. Then, out of the west came a vessel of pure silver gliding over the surface of the sea. She saw its size was great, but its form was hard for her to see until it slid gently into the sands of Ireland. Stepping from the boat, she saw a man of the fairest form. Golden yellow hair was on him as long as his shoulders, and a mantle with bands of golden thread was wrapped around him. The man walked forward and stood only a few inches from her. Before she could speak, he looked into her emerald eyes and says, "Is this the time that our lying together shall finally come?" Ériú laughed at his boldness and replied with a grin, "I haven't even made a tryst with you yet." The man held out his hand and smiled back, "Come, forget the tryst." Well, he must have been a beautiful man indeed, because they stretched themselves down together on the sands of the beach, making the seas churn, the winds play, the deer call, and the birds sing. When it was over, Ériú, evidently impressed with his performance, wept when he stood. "Why do you weep?" says he. "I have two things for which I should grieve," says Ériú. "Severing from you now that we have met, and that the fair youths of the Tuireadh will now entreat me in vain. For now my desire is for you, and you alone. You have possessed my heart. Your anxiety shall be taken away by two things." He drew a ring of gold from his middle finger and placed it in her palm. "First, by this ring." And he told her never to part with it, by sale or by gift, save only to the one whose finger it would fit perfectly. "I have another sorrow," says Ériú. "I know not who has come to me." "You shall not be ignorant of that," says he. "Allah, son of Jalwe, king of the Fómhoraigh, has come to you. From our meeting you shall bear a son, and no name shall be given him save Ériú and Bress, Ériú the beautiful. For every beautiful thing seen in Ireland, whether valley, fortress, ale, torch, woman, man, or steed, will be compared to our son, so that men will say of its beauty, it is a Bress." After that, Allah went back the same way he had arrived, and Ériú fared to her house, now pregnant with a son. When she brought forth the boy, he was named Ériú and Bress, as Allah had said. 1 week from his birth, the boy had already a fortnight's growth, and he maintained that pace of growth till the end of 7 years. By then, he had reached the height and stature of a 14-year-old. So it became truth that Bress succeeded Nua as king of the Tuireadh. At first, Bress was a good king. Because of the long debate over his kingship, it was eventually revealed that his father was one of the Fómhoraigh. This caused a great stir among the Tuireadh. So as a gesture of trust, Bress gave them 7 people among the Fómhoraigh as hostages to 7 kings among the Tuireadh. This was a promise to restrain his deeds and act with favor towards his mother's people. For if he had acted solely in favor of the Fómhoraigh, the Tuireadh would be within their rights to kill the hostages they kept. This was the first hostage-giving in Ireland, and in memory of this gift of hostages, it is said, Seacht níl de Ard Rí, 7 hostages for 7 kings. In return for the hostages, Ériú gave Bress land. And on the land he was given, the Daghdha agreed to build Bress a fortress whose workmanship would be incomparable to any other. But an even greater treasure for Bress would be the hand of the daughter of the Daghdha herself. Maighe of the generous heart would be his bride. With Maighe at his side, it was hoped that Bress would join 2 ancient tribes of the Fómhoraigh and the Tuireadh together. Alas, Bress's promises and generosity were not to last. When Bress assumed the kingship, 3 kings among the Fómhoraigh, Indach, Bress's father Allah, and Tethra, bound Ireland in tribute. So heavy was the tribute of the Fómhoraigh that there wasn't one column of smoke from one roof that was free of it. Even the lords of the Tuireadh were treated as slaves. Oghma, the strong-armed lord of poetry and writing, was set to carrying firewood, and the mighty Daghdha was tasked with digging a deep ditch around the impeccable fortress of Dunbressa he had given as a gift. Oghma was set the task of bringing fuel to the fortress of Dunbressa to stoke its fires. Oghma of the strong arms and skilled tongue had to carry massive bundles of firewood every day from the islands in Cuan Mo, known as Clew Bay today. As Oghma waded through the deep waters of the bay, the sea would sweep away 2/3 of his firewood as he went. Yet, despite this hardship, Oghma had to supply Dunbressa with all its firewood every day. It didn't take long for the lords and ladies of the Tuireadh to start murmuring against him, for their knives were not greased by him, and no matter how often they visited him, their breath never smelled of ale. More than this, Bress took away all their poets, their bards, their lampooners, their harpers, pipers, hornblowers, jugglers, and fools, who had always entertained the Sidhe in their mansions. There were no contests for their athletes, and their warriors sat without purpose. A great desire arose to have Nua return as king. So the Tuireadh gathered together to try and devise a way to heal Nua of his blemish, so that he could return and replace Bress as king. So their healer, Cath, with the help of Govanin Gau, fashioned a hand made of silver, a hand that had every motion and articulation of a real hand, and Cath joined it to Nua's arm. But that cure seemed wrong to Cath's son Maighe. Maighe went in search of Nua's hand that Sreng had severed, and on the fields of Cong, where they had fought the Fómhoraigh, Maighe took it out of the ground and brought it back to Nua. Maighe joined it back to Nua's arms, singing over him. Joint to joint of it, sinew to sinew, be healed, Nua, in thrice 3 days and nights. But Maighe's cure embarrassed his father, Cath. In a fit of anger, Cath flung a sword at his son's head and cut Maighe's skin down to the muscle. But the lad healed the wound by means of his skill. Cath struck him again and cut Maighe's muscle till he reached bone. But the lad healed this by the same means. In a rage, Cath struck Maighe a third blow that went all the way to his brain. But again, the lad healed that wound too. Furious, Cath struck a fourth blow and cut out his son's brain, declaring, even Maighe could never heal that final blow. To cover up the murder of his son, Cath buried Maighe secretly. But his sister, Ériú, who loved Maighe dearly, found him. She knelt over his grave and wept. And as her tears fell to the earth, 365 healing plants grew where none had grown before, each according to the number of Maighe's joints and sinews. From the plants that grew from Maighe's grave and Ériú's tears descend all the plants that have the power to heal. Ériú sensed their power. Ériú opened her mantle and separated the herbs according to their properties. But again, Cath found Ériú at her work, and still jealous of his son, confused the herbs so that none know their proper cures unless Ériú herself whispers in their ear. So even though so much knowledge was lost when Maighe died, it is said, if Maighe be not, Ériú remains. Time and toil passed, and the Daghdha grew weary of his work, digging ditches in the hot sun, pouring rain and falling snow alike. But to make matters even worse for the god of Druids, the Daghdha was roomed in the house of Creed Baal, a lazy, blind man among the Fómhoraigh whose oversized mouth was in his chest. Creed Baal was always hungry, and because of his insatiable hunger, always thought his dinner ration far too small and the Daghdha's far too large. Each night he would say, "O Daghdha, by your honor, let the 3 best bits of your ration go to me." And because generosity was considered a cardinal virtue among the Tuireadh, the Daghdha gave Creed Baal his best portions of food each night. Large, however, were Creed Baal's bits, so large that they were each the size of a large pig. Those 3 bits were a full third of the Daghdha's portion, and as the days went by, the Daghdha's strength grew worse, and his spirit grew weak. Then one day, as the Daghdha worked in the trench, he saw his son, Enslavement, standing over him. "That is fine work, O Daghdha," says Enslavement. "Even so," says the Daghdha. "What makes you look so ill?" says Enslavement. "I have cause for it," says the Daghdha. "Every evening, Creed Baal, the lampooner, demands the best 3 portions of my meal." His son, Ingus of the Swans, thought quietly, and a grand idea came. "I have counsel for you." And taking his hand from his own pouch, Enslavement brought forth 3 large coins of gold and gave them to his father. "Put these 3 coins into the 3 bits you give at close of day to Creed Baal. They will, in truth, be the goodliest of your dish, and the gold will turn in his belly so that he will die. And thereafter the judgment of Bress will be proved wrong, for Bress will accuse you of poisoning him." And so it happened just as Enslavement predicted. Creed Baal asked again for the Daghdha's portion, swallowed the 3 coins of gold, and died. When the Fómhoraigh learned of his death, they hauled the Daghdha before Bress and said, "The Daghdha has killed Creed Baal by means of a deadly herb which he gave him." As there seemed little doubt of this, Bress ordered the Daghdha to be killed. Whereupon the Daghdha replied, "What you utter, O king of the warriors of the Fena, is not a king's truth. For I was watched by Creed Baal when I was at my work, and he used to say to me, 'Give me, O Daghdha, the 3 best bits of your portion. Bad is my housekeeping tonight.' So I would have perished thereby had not the 3 gold coins I found today helped me. I put them in my ration. I gave it to Creed Baal, for the gold was the best thing that was before me. Hence, the gold is now inside Creed Baal. He died from his own greed." "It is clear," says Bress. "Let the lampooner's belly be cut open to know if the gold be found inside. If it isn't found, you shall die. If, however, it is found, you shall keep your life." After that, they cut open the lampooner's belly, and the 3 coins of gold were found, and so, by the counsel of his son, Enslavement, the Daghdha was saved. The father saves the son, so that one day the son may save the father. When the Daghdha went to his work the next morning, he found his son, Enslavement, waiting for him again. And Angus says to him, "You will soon finish your work, but you shall not seek reward until all the cattle of Ireland are brought before you, and you are given your choice of any among them. And of them choose only a heifer, black-maned, white of body, and red of ear." Not long after, the Daghdha finally brought his work to an end. Whereupon Bress asked him what he would take as payment for his labor. And the Daghdha answered, "I charge you to gather all the cattle of Ireland into one place, and give me my pick among them." Bress did as the Daghdha asked, and the Daghdha chose from them the heifer who was black-maned, white of body, and red of ear. It was then, to his horror, that Bress Maighe realized the Daghdha, among the vast throng of cattle gathered, had chosen the glass goblin herself. In a matter of seconds, Bress had lost the one treasure Balor of the Evil Eye would never accept losing. Fear sank into the marrow of Bress's bones, and after his fear, he turned to rage. That very night, a bard came to visit the house of Bress. He was Corpora of the Tuireadh. Anger was on Bress that night. Anger against all the Tuireadh for losing Glass Goblin to the Daghdha's trickery. So out of pure spite, Bress gave Corpora a small cabin, narrow, black, and dark. Inside, there was neither fire, nor furniture, nor bed. 3 small, hard, dry cakes were left for him on a miserable little dish. When the sun rose the next morning, Corpora was not thankful. In those days, bards had even more power than they do today. Their words carried old magic, and to anger a bard was to court disaster. As Corpora went through the courtyard of Dun Bressa, and his lips were touched by the first rays of the rising sun, he spoke a poem filled with the memory of eternity. Without food, quickly on a dish, without a cow's milk whereon a calf grows, without a man's abode under the gloom of night, without paying a company of storytellers, let that be the fate of Bress, so there be no prosperity in Bress. That night, Bress fell into a deep fever. His dreams were nightmares, and his moans echoed through the halls of Dun Bressa, making even the dead shudder in their graves. Naught save disease was on Bress from that hour. When he woke in the morning, his beauty was gone, marred forever by the scars and sores of the first curse ever spoken in Ireland. The curse that set the standard for all curses after it. For the face of Bress was marred with scars, boils, and liverous stains. And when he looked upon his own face, his scream echoed across oceans. But the trial of Bress had only just begun. With Nua healed, the Tuireadh gathered together and stood at the gates of Dun Bressa in the morning. Aghast at the appearance of their foster son and moved to pity him, they had none the less grown tired of the heavy tributes demanded by the kings of the Fómhoraigh who dwell beneath the sea. They demanded Bress return their sureties and give the restitution of Ireland back to Nua. In a rage, he turned the kingship over to Nua and stormed from Dun Bressa with poison in his heart. Bress, despondent, went into the lonely places of Ireland, calling his mother's name again and again.
Ériú!
On the slopes of a distant mountain, Ériú appeared before him. Bress demanded to know where he could find his father and how he could find the mansions of the Fómhoraigh beneath the sea. Ériú, as any mother would, took pity on her son's grief and lifted him up. She knelt down beside him and brought Bress to the same hill where she had seen the vessel of silver on the still blue sea. She took Bress to the beach where she had first seen his father. When her story of his father was finished, she gave Bress the ring which Allah had left, placing it around his middle finger, and it fit perfectly. True to her word, Ériú had not delivered it, either by sale or gift, to any other until that day, for there were none among the Tuireadh who it could fit. As the ring slid down the finger of Bress, the sea around them went suddenly still until the water was like glass, and a thick fog settled over the bay. Gliding out of the mist was the same silver vessel that Ériú had seen years before. Ériú turned and sent a long, trilling whistle into the echoing hills. From the hills came 3 great hounds and 2 strong mares, the equal of which Bress had never seen, for they were keen in mind, stout in body, and as swift as the winds that run over the sea. And so 3 hounds, 2 mares, Bress, and Ériú herself boarded the silver vessel as it drew away from the sands of Ireland and off into the mists of the wide western sea. They went forward till they reached the primordial lands of the Fómhoraigh, a great plain with many assemblies, and arrived finally at a great assembly among them. When they arrived, news was demanded of them to name themselves and tell of their origin. They answered that they had come from the green lands of Ireland. Then the Fómhoraigh asked if they had hounds, for it was the custom among the Fómhoraigh that when a group of them met with another group, that they would challenge each other to a contest. "We have hounds," says Bress. Upon hearing this, the Fómhoraigh challenged the hounds of the newcomers to race their own, but the hounds of the Tuireadh were faster than the hounds of the Fómhoraigh. Then they were asked to race their horses against the horses of the Fómhoraigh. But the mares of the Tuireadh were faster than the stallions of the Fómhoraigh. Not to be outdone, the Fómhoraigh challenged them to a contest of swordplay, and Bress stepped forward with his own blade. When Bress set his hand to hilt, the ring of his father caught the light of the sun beneath the sea, and its glint drew the eye of Allah himself, who recognized it instantly. Allah stepped forward to end the contest and inquired who was the hero who wore it. Ériú answered and told the king that Bress was his son. Together they related to Allah and the assembled Fómhoraigh the whole of the story as we have remembered it together. His father was sorry for him, saying, "What need has brought you out of the land where you should rule?" And fair play to him, Bress replied as a king, "Nothing has brought me here save my own injustice and arrogance. I stripped them of their jewels, their treasures, and their food. Neither tribute nor honor price was given to them until they took it back from me today." "That is bad," says Allah. "Better is their prosperity than their kingship. Better their prayers than their curses. Why have you come to me?" "I have come to ask you for champions," says Bress. "I will retake my kingship with force." "You won't gain by injustice what you failed to gain with justice," replied his father. "I have more news," says Bress. "The Daghdha has won the glass goblin from me, and she is a prize of the Tuireadh once more." On hearing of the loss of the glass goblin, a shudder of fear went through all the Fómhoraigh. So, with Allah leading them, they went before their most terrifying champion, Balor of the strong blows, and their Ard Rí, Indach Mac de Domnan, to break the news of the loss of the glass goblin. All of the primordial tribe that dwell beneath the sea came with them. When Balor learned of the loss of the glass goblin, his rage shook the earth, and the sea bounced in its bed. it was decided that the whole host of the Fómhoraigh would march forth, impose their tribute, assert their rule, and crush the Tuireadh forever. So numerous was the hosting of the Fómhoraigh that the sea churned and the fish of the deep disappeared, fleeing in terror before the overwhelming visage of the towering Fómhoraigh. The sea ceased to give food, and the peoples of the coast began to starve. And because the Fómhoraigh still possessed the harp of the Daghdha, even the land had grown tired and grey, losing the right rhythm of the seasons. And all the peoples of the earth began to starve. Never before or since has an enemy more horrible or fearful than the host of the Fómhoraigh ever come to threaten the green hills of the world. But light remained. A cloaked stranger came to the glittering dunes of Drumcan, the place men name Tara today. On that day, Nua was holding a great feast for the Tuireadh, celebrating his return to kingship and the departure of Bress. Guarding over Drumcan were two doorkeepers, Gamel mac Fiagal and Camel mac Riagal. This cloaked stranger made his way to the gate and asked the gatekeepers to bring him to the king. "Who are you yourself?" they asked. "Saul Danach is here, the son of Cian, the son of Jean Cecht, and the son of Ellen, daughter of Balor of the Baleful Eye, foster son of Cheltu Nic Moimor, and Yochi Garav Macduach of the mighty Firwallach," he replied. The doorkeeper replied to this Saul Danach, "What craft do you practice? For no one without a craft may enter Drumcan." "Question me," he said. "I am a craftsman." The doorkeeper answered, "We don't need you. We have a craftsman already. Luchtana mac Lú Lámhfada." "Question me, doorkeeper. I am a smith." "We have a smith already," the doorkeeper answered. Govanin Gau. "Question me. I have strength." "We do not need you. We have a strong man already, Oma." "Question me. I am a harper," he said. "We do not need you. We have a harper already, Aucan Macbiclmos, whom the men of three gods rescued in the mounds of the Chi." "Question me. I am a champion." "We do not need you. We have a champion already, Bressel." Then he said, "Question me, doorkeeper. I am a poet and a historian." "We do not need you. We already have a poet and historian, Ain Eamon." "Question me. I am a sorcerer." "We do not need you. We have sorcerers already. Our druids and our people of power are numerous." "Question me. I am a physician." "We do not need you. We have your grandfather Jean Cecht as a physician." "Question me," he said. "I am a cupbearer." "We do not need you. We have 9 cupbearers already. Their names are River, Dew and Light, Birth, Earth, and Labor. Clear, clean, and shining." "Question me. I am a worker of gold." "We do not need you. We have a metal worker already, Crain na Caird." With a smile, Lú then said, "Ask to your king, does he have a single man who knows all these crafts? And if he has, I will not proceed into Drumcan." So doorkeeper went into the royal house to relate all that had transpired. "A young warrior has come to the doorway of the fort. Saul Danach is his name, and all the crafts which serve your people, he has them all himself, so he claims he is the man of each art and every skill." Nua stood from his throne and ordered that his own chessboard be brought to him. So when the gates of Drumcan were opened before the cloaked stranger, there sat Nua behind a gaming table with the chess game before him. Nua sat on the other side of the table in his throne, and all the Tuireadh were arrayed behind him. Nua told the cloaked stranger that he would never enter Drumcan unless he won the game against Nua himself. And that is just what the cloaked stranger did. Over many tense hours, the stranger matched and then exceeded the skill of Nua and won the game. And when he did so, Nua stood and said, "Let him into the fort, for never before has a man like this come to these halls." They asked the cloaked stranger for his name, and he replied, "I am Lú Lámhfada." Lú went into the enclosure, and there he was given the three-legged seat of a master. Oghma, however, stepped forward to test the strength of Lú. Oghma of the strong arms tossed a great flagstone through the wall of the royal dun, and it came to rest with a thunderous shudder outside the enclosure of Drumcan. A slab of stone so large it had been placed originally by the collective might of 80 oxen. Lú walked out of the great dun, and with a grunt threw it back again, so precisely that it came to rest in exactly the same place it had been, as if it had never been moved at all. And not only that, Lú also threw the piece of the wall of the dun the great stone had dislodged, making the royal dun whole once more. "Let a harp be played for us," says the entire assembly of the Tuireadh, handing Lú the harp of Auchan. First, Lú Lámhfada played the sleep music for the assembly. As he played, the assembled Tuireadh began to drop one by one, their last memory before they slept being the sweet music that flowed from the fingers of Lú. They slept from that moment till sunset the next day. When they finally awoke, Lú played the sorrowful music till they wept. Then he played the joyful music until they were so ecstatic all they could do was dance. Nua, after seeing Lú's many skills, began to wonder if this youth might be able to liberate them from the awesome power of the Fómhoraigh. So the assembled Tuireadh held a council about Lú, knowing well that the power of Balor was only slumbering beneath the sea, and that he and the collective might of the Fómhoraigh would return. And they also knew that Lú alone was the child of 3 tribes, and the only one who could wield the powers of all of them. They knew Lú was the grandson of Balor, and they knew that Lú had been fostered by Maighe himself. The decision was made that Nua would exchange seats with Lú, and until the Fómhoraigh were defeated, Lú would be king. So like any great warrior, Lú put his mind against the Fómhoraigh first. Along with Nua, the Daghdha, Oghma, Govanin Gau, and Jean Cath, they left Drumcan and went into isolation to the remote bog of Gaeilge. There they stayed hidden in the bog for a year, making their plans together in secret, so the Fómhoraigh wouldn't know that the Tuireadh were planning rebellion. It's from their talk during that time that the bog got its nickname, the Whispers of the Men of Day, where the echo of their words can still be heard. When they finished their plans, Lú returned across the sea to Oghma to marshal the riders of the Sidhe and bring them back to Ireland on the anniversary of his foster mother's death, so that her power and the powers of the Firwalach would be with them too. Months later, Nua held the festival of Baltana at Uisneach with all the Tuireadh. Just after they had assembled, they saw a light in the east. There they saw an armed host coming toward them over the plain, and a young warrior was leading them. The brightness of his face was like the sun, so bright that they were unable to look at him directly. When he came nearer, they knew it was Lú Lámhfada, returning from the land of swift aid, and with him were the riders of the Sidhe and his own foster brothers, named White Flower, Blue-Eyed Spear, Red Ring, and Rusty Hair. Lú himself rode Eanwar of the One Mane, Manannán's own horse, who is as swift as the cold winds of spring, whether he rides over water or land. The one who rides Eanwar can never be killed while they sit on her back. Lú wore the breastplate of Manannán, the power that protects whoever wears it from all wounds. And on his head he wore a helmet set with 2 precious stones, one in front, the other behind. When Lú removed his helmet, his forehead shone like lightning in a clouded sky. At his side was Manannán's sword, Fómhoraigh, the Answerer. None wounded by it ever lives, and when it is pulled from its sheath, anyone who sees it loses all their strength. But moments later, from the west, came darkness. There they saw a tall, slovenly troop coming toward them, 9 times 9 in number. These were the messengers of the Fómhoraigh, and they had come to collect their rent, their taxes, and their tribute from the Tuireadh. Riding in front of the Fómhoraigh was the hard and cruel Aina, Aoife, Conradh, and Cumper. Such great dread flowed from these 4 horsemen that a cloud of fear overcame the Tuireadh. But Lú and the riders of the Sidhe only smiled at them. As the Fómhoraigh approached, Nua and all the Tuireadh rose from their leisure to greet them. But Lú said aloud, "Why do you rise up before this surly, slovenly troop, when you did not rise before us?" And Nua answered, "It is needful for us to do it, for if there is but a child of us sitting among them, they would not think it too small a cause to kill." "By my word," says Lú, "a great desire arises in me to destroy them." Nua replied, "That is a thing that would bring great harm on us, for we would meet our death and destruction because of it." "It is too long a time you have been under this oppression," said Lú. And with that he called to the riders of the Sidhe, and they made such an attack on the Fómhoraigh that the ground shook beneath them. So overpowering were Lú and the riders of the Sidhe that they killed 8 nines of them, leaving only the last 9 that Lú placed under Nua's protection. Lú said to the surviving Fómhoraigh, "I would have killed you along with the others, but I would rather send you as messengers to your own country than my own people, knowing that you would kill them anyway." Lú told the remaining Fómhoraigh to go back, to tell their people what happened that day, that Ireland, the Firwalach, and the Tuireadh were now free. So the 9 went back and told the gathering Fómhoraigh the story of the riders of the Sidhe, and how a young, well-featured lad had come to Ireland and killed all the tax collectors but themselves. And the only reason he let us live was that we might tell you this story ourselves. A strange feeling came over Balor of the Evil Eye. "Do you know who is the young man?" "I know well," said Kellen of the Crooked Teeth, the wife of Balor. "He is our grandson, and it was foretold that from the time he came to Ireland, we would lose our power there forever." Bress stepped forward and said, "I myself will go to Ireland, and 7 great battalions of the riders of the Fómhoraigh with me, and I will give battle to this ill Danach, this master of all arts. I will strike his head from his neck and bring it back here to the green of Berva." So the host was gathered with the vanguard of the Fómhoraigh and Balor followed behind them, saying, "Give battle to this Ildánach and strike off his head. And then we shall tie Ireland in chains to the back of our ships and drag it into the lands beneath the sea, and let the destroying water take its place, so that none of the Tuireadh will follow it there till the end of life and time." From beneath the waters the Fómhoraigh sailed their ships with their painted sails over the ridge of the wide sea, till they came to the harbour of Bala Asadara. When they landed, they streamed forth into West Connacht and destroyed it altogether. Every man, every woman, every child, every fairy, every tree, and every blade of grass, through and through. The king of Connacht at that time was Bojarric, son of the Daghdha, who barely managed to escape with some of his people, and warned the Tuireadh that the Fómhoraigh had finally come, with only one goal: to cover Ireland in chains and drag her beneath the sea. This time, the whole of the Fómhoraigh had landed, and the land of Ireland grew silent with horror. All the kings of the Fómhoraigh were with them: Balor of the baleful eye, Bress mac Alla, Alla mac Jalwe, Alla mac Lobos, Indach mac de Domnan, Gol and Ingol, and Ochtrelach mac Indach. And unafraid, the Daghdha went on his own, to spy on the Fómhoraigh and see if he could delay them. Without a trace of fear, the Daghdha walked alone, right into the main camp of the Fómhoraigh. He was like the lone oak tree that stands before mountains and is still proud. There he asked, for the sake of honor and fairness, for the Fómhoraigh to delay their foray against the Tuireadh, to make an honorable fight, unless, of course, they were afraid. After some thought, the Fómhoraigh agreed on one condition. The Fómhoraigh set about to filling their king's cauldron with 80 measures of new milk, 80 measures of meal and fat, along with goats, sheep, and pigs. They boiled them all together and poured the sickening brew into a large hole in the ground. In return for their delay, the Daghdha must accept their hospitality, they said, so they would not be slandered as Bress had been for his lack of generosity. Thereupon they handed the Daghdha a ladle, so big that a man and woman could have lain inside it side by side. Indach ordered the Daghdha to eat his fill, threatening, "We will make an end of you if you leave any part of it unconsumed." The Daghdha laughed, for if it was one thing the Daghdha could do, it was eat. In fact, he loves to eat. He took the ladle, dipped a portion out of the hole, and gratefully swallowed it down, saying, "Ah, if the broth tastes as well as this bit's taste, this is good food." And the Daghdha, much to the surprise of the Fómhoraigh, who were sure he would never be able to eat everything, kept dipping his ladle into the brew till the hole was totally empty. And not only that, but when the concoction was all gone, the Daghdha got down on his hands and knees and with apparent glee scraped up all that was left among the dirt and mud as well. So great was the meal, the Daghdha fell asleep like a baby right next to the hole, lying on his back and snoring with the volume of a thunderstorm. And the Fómhoraigh, they couldn't help it. They laughed and laughed and laughed. For his belly was the size of a huge cauldron or a great house. When the Daghdha finally woke up, heavy as a boulder, he slowly made his way out of the camp of the Fómhoraigh in a daze. Not realizing that as he slept, the Fómhoraigh had stripped him of his rich clothes and dressed him. They dressed him in a cape that only went to the hollow of his elbows, in a drab brown coat that was long in front but very short behind, and on his feet were crude wraps of horsehide with the hair facing out. They tied to his hand a massive wheeled fork that would take at least 8 strong men to carry, so that as the Daghdha stumped away, he left behind him a canal deep enough to make the boundary ditch of an entire province. On his way back to the Tuireadh, however, the Daghdha met another. He came across the battle crow, the Morian, washing herself in the river. She lay as naked in the waters as a babe, and not to put too fine a point on it, one of her feet was on the south bank and the other was on the north bank. Her flame-red hair hung in 9 thick locks, and the waters of the river flowing around her. At the sight of her naked glory, the bulge in the Daghdha's belly went somewhere else. Casting away entirely the costume of the Fómhoraigh, he lay with the Phantom Queen. The Morian promised the Daghdha, as they moved together, that she would steal the blood of Induk's heart and give it to the armies of the Tuireadh, in return for his prank on the Daghdha. On hearing this and feeling her, the Daghdha was very pleased. While the Daghdha was away, Lú Lámhfada hadn't been idle. He called together the druids, smiths, physicians, lawmakers, and chariot drivers of the Tuireadh, and gave them the plans for the battle that was now inevitable. Around the great blazing fire of Uisneach, he called them forward one by one and asked each of them how they would defeat the terrible power of the Fómhoraigh. The great druid Maighe stepped forward and said, "This is what I will do. Through my power, I will throw all the mountains of Ireland on the Fómhoraigh until their heads roll on the plains. And the 12 chief mountains of Ireland will march with us and fight at our side. Sliú Líang, Sliú Slanga, the mountains of Mourne, Ard Rí, Sliú Lámhfada, Sliú Snechta, Sliú Mish, Bin Bhradach, Bin Ghura, Ben Levi, Shegus, and Cruachanagla." Then Lú asked the cupbearers of the Tuireadh what power they would wield. "We will put a deep thirst in the Fómhoraigh, and bring the 12 great lochs of Ireland before them, and however great their thirst, they will find no water in them. Loch Jarek, Loch Limonach, Loch Urbshin, Loch Rí, Loch Masca, Loch Cuin, Loch Lane, Loch Nea, Loch Faiol, Loch Igara, Loch Ria, and Loch Mór. And we will go to the 12 chief rivers of Ireland, Banawa, An Wowin, An Vanna, An Owen Mór, An Lee, An Tinnin, An Woy, An Garwog, An Arna, Owen na Finna, An Ruarhach, An Túr. And they will be hidden away from the Fómhoraigh, so that they will not find a drop within. But as for our people, the mighty Tuireadh, there will be drink for them even if the battle were to last for 7 long years." Lú called forward one of their druids, Feagol MacMornos and asked him what power he would wield. I will cause 3 showers of fire to pour on the faces of the army of the Fómhoraigh. I will take from them 2/3 of their bravery and 2/3 of their strength. I will put sickness in their bodies and in the bodies of their horses. But for our people, the skillful Tuireadh, every breath we breathe will increase our strength and our bravery, and even if we fight for 7 long years, we will never falter. Lú called forward the 2 great druidesses, Maighe and Gianan, and asked them what power they would wield. It is easy to say, we will put enchantment on the trees and the stones and the sods of the earth, and they will become our army against the Fómhoraigh, putting terror on them and driving them in panic. Lú asked Carpara Maighe what he would do. It is not hard to say. I will make a satire on them at sunrise, with the wind from the north, on a hilltop with my back against a thorn tree, a stone in one hand and a thorn in the other. And with this curse, I will put shame and enchantment on them, so that they will not be able to stand against our ferocity. Lú asked Govanin Gao what he would do. If the men of Ireland stay in the battle to the end of 7 years, for every sword that is broken, for every spear that is lost from its shaft, I will put a new one in its place. No spear made by my hand will ever miss its mark, and no man it touches will ever taste life again. And that is more than Dulab, the smith of the Fómhoraigh, will ever do. And you, Cranagh, Lú asked, what help will you give to our men in this battle? And Cranagh replied, it is not hard to tell that. Rivets for our spears, hilts for our swords, bosses and rims for our shields. I will supply them all. And you, Lúchtana, Lú asked their greatest woodworker, what will you do? I will give our people all they want of shields and spear shafts, Lúchtana replied. Then Lú turned to Cath and asked him what he would do. Everyone that will be wounded there, unless their head is struck off or their brain cut through, I will make them whole and sound again for the battle of the morrow. Just as Cath finished his speech, the Daghdha returned, fresh from his long journey with the Morian. He walked buck naked straight up to the fire, raised his arms and said aloud, those great things you all boast of, I will do them all myself. And the Tuireadh gave a great shout of laughter. It is you who are the good god, said the Tuireadh as the Daghdha flexed his arms, and they all laughed together. Then Lú spoke to the entire tribe of the Tuireadh, putting strength in them, so that each one of them carried the spirit of a king or queen. The agreed delay came to an end. The Cailins of August had come. The Fómhoraigh and the Tuireadh marched towards one another until they met on the plains surrounding Loch Arrow. The 2 armies taunted each other. First, Bress shouted, the Tuireadh are daring offer battle to us. And Induk replied, I give my word, it is in tiny pieces their bones will be, if they do not give in to us and pay their tribute. Then Lú stepped forth and mocked them. He hopped on 1 foot, looking through only 1 eye and waving only 1 arm. For many among the Fómhoraigh were 1-armed, 1-eyed, and 1-legged. As he hopped, he babbled like a fool, mocking the crude language of the Fómhoraigh and making the Tuireadh laugh. and turned to look on the army of the Fómhoraigh. One eye in his head became as small as a pin, while the other grew to the size of a large cauldron. Each hair on his head stood up as straight as the bristle of a boar, and every hair was tipped with blood. Lú stood on one foot, raised one arm, while the other snapped stiff against his side, and with the power of his grandfather, he cursed the Fómhoraigh. Havoc, the strain of battles and shared death. Our struggle after outdwellers broke our common home. They will know defeat beneath our collective fury. O fairy hosts, land of men on guard, birds of prey, men without choice, hindered outdwellers, only they have fear. They will listen, writhing in their torment. Sad, dark men are they, shining silver are we. Foe, fey, they will turn against the sun. Ours is the sacred sustenance of clouds and flowers, lending us the skill of druids. My battle will not dwindle till its end. Bravely I speak before them. I do not fear green rushes laid waste by fire, or of death's form made permanent. Death before us will be made into birth. Standing before them is the full might of all the Sidhe. In the presence of vital Oghma, in the presence of the sky, earth, and sea, in the presence of the sun, moon, and stars, the spirit of champions is our spirit, our vision. My hosts are great hosts filled with the might of oceans, boiling with the might of the foam-covered sea, smelted, golden, powerful, born again on the field of battle, shared death our strain, havoc our strain. So full of fiery imbus were the Tuireadh from the crane magic of Lú, that they let out a great wail that made the earth and sky tremble like children. Together, all the peoples of the Sidhe swarmed forward into the answering, roaring wall of the Fómhoraigh. But then, together, all the lords and ladies of the Tuireadh suddenly grabbed Lú and carried him away from the battle, while he screamed with fury and despair. For they were afraid that Lú's death would doom the world. Dragging him back behind their lines required all the might of all the lords and ladies of the Tuireadh together. Dragging him back, and with their greatest sorcery, they raised a great forest of thick, tall, dense oaks around him. And then, around the forest, they raised a wide ring of thousands of dense, strong, pillared stones against him. And around the stones, they left 9 of their stoutest champions to make sure he couldn't leave. It took all the lords and ladies of the Sidhe, all the first day, to accomplish Lú's captivity. But the rest of the Sidhe fought against the primordial power of the Fómhoraigh like savages, staining the fields white in fairy blood while the land quaked beneath their fury. After that first horrible day, after the Fómhoraigh limped back to their camps, a heavy mist settled over the battlefield. And the Fómhoraigh heard a distant music that seemed to come from the darkness all around them. But whenever they tried to approach the music, it faded away. When the battle continued with the rising of the sun, and the Fómhoraigh stood across the battlefield from the long lines of the Tuireadh, they were filled with wonder and dismay. As the new sun cast her light over the fields surrounding Loch Arrow, they saw before them, lying lifeless on the sod, the bodies of their own companions, now covered with the dew that heralds the dawn. Many of the Fómhoraigh stood weaponless because their own had been broken the day before, but nowhere To be seen were the lifeless bodies or broken blades of the Tuireadh. And as the Fómhoraigh broke like a tidal wave on the front lines of the Tuireadh, they saw the still living faces of foes they had killed the day before, and every single one of them held a weapon. Unknown to the brutish Fómhoraigh, years before, Cath and his two sons, Maighe and Ochtulach, and his daughter, Ériú, had dug a deep well. Together the four of them sang over the well and cast herbs deep into its cold, deep waters. And on the previous night, beneath the cover of the mists that settled over the battlefield, the Tuireadh brought the dead and dying to the well they named Tuireadh, the Well of Wholeness. One by one, the dead or dying were dipped headfirst into the cold, herbed waters of the well. When they emerged whole, sound, and very much alive. And not only were they healed, but the well put such fire into their spirit that they were quicker and stronger than before. And as to the weapons of the Tuireadh, Gao aroused the fires of his forge, making and mending sword and spear. Gao could make a spearhead with 3 strokes of his hammer, and deftly toss the new blade into the air, while Lúchtana cut spear shafts with 3 strokes of his knife. So when Gao tossed the spearhead, Lúchtana threw the new shaft straight into the ring of each spearhead as it flew through the air. The new spear landed in Cranach's lap, and he would rivet each one of them with 3 taps and 3 turns. And with that, they became the deadly spears that only the people of the Hollow Hills can make. And from that day to this, Gao, Lúchtana, and Cranach are known as the Tuireadh, the 3 gods of art. With such great magic against them, the Fómhoraigh sent a young man to spy on the Tuireadh, and discovered how the dead were brought back to life, and weapons so quickly remade. Because he was half Tuireadh, they sent Rúaidán, the son of Bress and Bríd. Rúaidán saw the Well of Wholeness and the deeds of the Tuireadh. He went back to his father's people and told the Fómhoraigh what he saw. When the Fómhoraigh heard Rúaidán's story, they decided that it was the skilled magic of the Tuireadh that hindered them the most. So they sent Rúaidán back, but this time as an assassin, knowing he would be the only one among them who could get close enough to kill. And Rúaidán, like the sons of most fathers, was eager to prove his worth to himself, his father, and his people. But there was terrible dread on his mother's heart. So Rúaidán went back on the 3rd day, while the battle raged behind him, to the forge of Gao. He asked Gao to forge him a spearhead, and it was done. He asked Lúchtana for a stout spear shaft, and it was done. Then he asked for rivets from Cranach, and it was done. With the deadly spear now in his hand, Rúaidán turned as quick as fire and threw it directly at Gao, wounding him terribly. But Gao stood and started to pull the spear from his own body. Rúaidán panicked and burst through the ranks of the Tuireadh, running towards the Fómhoraigh. As he ran, Gao threw it back at Rúaidán, piercing him so violently that Rúaidán died within moments. Bress, the army of the Fómhoraigh, and the army of the Tuireadh all saw him fall. Then a heart-wrenching wail was heard. A wail that made the clouds weep, the earth moan, and pierced the sea. Breaking from the ranks of the Tuireadh, Bríd ran to her son, screaming as she went. She held Rúaidán's broken body in her arms, knowing that because he had been killed by a weapon forged by Gao himself, even the Well of Wholeness couldn't bring him back. The battle stopped with a hush. Bríd keened her son with the shrieks, cries, and the song that only the mothers of lost children can make. This was the first keening ever made in the world. Even the wail of the banshee herself is only the faint echo of the broken-hearted wail of Bríd for Ruadan. Then the Fómhoraigh made a massive charge at the Well of Furnace. The Fómhoraigh killed so many of the fairies who stood before them, and moved with such overwhelming force that even the lords and ladies of the Tuireadh gave way. Their king, Indach, called to the Fómhoraigh and ordered each of them to bring a stone and throw it into the well. Stone after stone after stone rained down into the well like hailstones out of a blackened sky. The stones rained down until it overflowed with them, and still the stones came. They piled into a great cairn above the plains of Locharo until no hint of the well remained. This cairn stands there still. It is called Heapstown Cairn today. The last day of the great battle had come. Both Fómhoraigh and Tuireadh could feel finality in the air. The Fómhoraigh stood in strong, impenetrable ranks, like a great wall of night shrouded in stone. There was not a leader or fighter among them without dense armor for skin, heads as strong as helmets, a broad spear in their right hand, heavy swords in their belts, and strong shields on their left. To attack the army of the Fómhoraigh that day was to make war on mountains or challenge the wrath of hurricanes. So terrifying was their countenance that the 9 guardians of the Tuireadh that had been placed around Lú left their posts to join the Tuireadh on the plains of Locharo. Maighe, Bóidearg, and Cath went with them. Maighe, Maighe, and the Morian all rose up as well, and walked without fear towards the mountain range that was the ancient Fómhoraigh. But there, looming behind the ranks of the Fómhoraigh, was the vast shadow of Balor. The battle fought that day is beyond the power of poets or bards, words or songs to convey. We know only that all the spirits and peoples of the earth hid in crevices, caves, and crannies, fearing the sky itself was about to shatter and rain down on them. Fear gripped all life in the despair that the fury of the Fómhoraigh would break and burn the world. And to the dismay of all living things, the battle turned against the Tuireadh. Their king, Nua of the Silver Hand, and Lady Maighe attacked Balor together. Their attack on Balor held the fury of 2 great tidal waves crashing into a mountain. The earth shook, the sky groaned, and the sea rolled in its bed. But in the end, Balor of the piercing eye, Balor of the terrible blows, cast them both down. When the Daghdha witnessed their deaths from afar, he gave a great cry of grief. And when he did, he was pierced by a spear cast from Kellen, Balor's crooked-toothed wife. And from this dreadful wound, the blood of the Daghdha flowed like a river of milk over the grasses of Locharo. Even in his distant captivity, Lú heard the screams of Nua, Maighe, and the pain of the Daghdha. Hearing them, Lú was filled with the rage of storms. With great strokes of his sword that flashed like lightning in the sky, he cut like a scythe through the dense forest of oaks that surrounded him. When he came to the hulking, wide circle of stones, he broke each one that stood in his way with one tread of his foot. Before that day, the bark of oaks were smooth, but now, to this very day, they bear the memory of Lú's sword as gouges in deep cracks. And on each stone that stood in his way, the mark of his footprint still remains. From that day forward, among the Irish and Scottish kings of old, each was inaugurated with his foot standing inside of one of the footprints Lú made that very day. Lú finally broke from the barrier of stones and rushed to the front of the Tuireadh, and his coming was like a second dawn. He rode inward and cut through the terrible army of the Fómhoraigh. The druids of the Tuireadh called forth their most powerful magics, and the earth shook. Over the horizon came the 12 great mountains of Ireland to fight along with them. The trees and stones of Ireland moved like a great wave over the fields of Loch Arrow and threw themselves on the primordial Fómhoraigh with such fury it stole the breath from their lips. With Lú's arrival, a lost battle became a desperate one. Lú heartened the Tuireadh to fight as they had never fought before. He reminded them that their only enemy was despair. It was better for them to die protecting Ireland and all life than to live under the bonds of fear and despair any longer. And he sang a song of courage to them, and his song was filled with the old magic of the music of the Sidhe. When they heard the song of Lú, the Tuireadh gave a great shout and surged towards the Fómhoraigh like an angry sea. When they clashed with the lines of the Fómhoraigh, the fate of all life hung in the balance, and the screams of the dying echoed among the stars themselves. There was a great slaughter. Blood on sod. Many beautiful folk among the ageless Sidhe fell in the tomb of death. Pride and shame were mixed side by side, hardness and red anger. All about them ran rivers of white blood over green turf. Spear dashed against shield, sword against sword, shout against shout. Spears whistled through the air amid the shrieks of the dying, and the rattling of scabbards was like thunder above the din. Many slipped in the blood beneath their feet and fell, striking their heads against one another and scattering their wits. The river Unnen carried away the bodies of Fómhoraigh and Fairy alike. Then Lú took up the ancient spear that his ancestors had forged. The spear forged long ago in Gorius in the north of the world. The spear that brought victory to any who held it. All the stories of Balor came to his mind. Not only the stories of his horror, but the loving stories of his mother. Lú called out insults to Balor, knowing the only way to defeat him was to arouse his anger so he would open his eye. Hearing Lú's reproaches, wrath seized Balor, and he said to the men with him, "Lift up my eyelid so I may see this chatterer that talks at me." They raised the 3 covers of Balor's eye. As the first cover was lifted, all the plants and ferns began to wither. And when the second cover was lifted, the trees began to smolder. But with the skill, precision, and speed that only the child of the 3 peoples could possess, Lú cast his bright spear straight into Balor's eye. So deadly was the force of Lú's cast that it drove Balor's eye out through the back of his head, turning it toward his own people when it fell, and 3 times 9 of the Fómhoraigh instantly burst into flame and turned to ash. If Lú had not put out that eye when he did, the whole of Ireland would have been burned in one horrific flash. Then the eye of Balor turned lazily down towards the earth and burned itself deeper and deeper into the ground until it was lost in the darkness of its own bottomless tomb. So great was the poison of his eye that it left a wide depression and deep hole where it vanished, burning its way down into the depths of the earth. In that place now stands a lake called Loch Nasul, Lake of the Eye. And sometimes the waters of the lake pour down into the depths of the earth, leaving the lake empty. There they quench the fire of Balor's eye that still sleeps. Lú stepped forward, raised the lifeless head of the greatest among the Fómhoraigh, and struck it off. And as for Indach, the king of the Fómhoraigh, he fell, crushed in the battle. Blood burst from his mouth, and he called out for his poet, Lat Glas, but Lat Glas couldn't hear him over the screams of the dying. Then the Morian came. Her countenance gave strength to the Tuireadh, but her coming drained the color from Indach's face. And just as she had promised the Daghdha, she stretched forth her fingers and brought forth the blood of Indach's heart, taking his strength and showering it over the armies of the Tuireadh. Filled with her power and the stolen power of the king of the Fómhoraigh, the Tuireadh swarmed over their enemies as they fled over the ford where the Unnon meets the sea. It's been called the Ford of Destruction ever since. After the blood magic of the Morian, it wasn't a battle anymore. It was a rout. Seeing the dark visage of the Morian feeding the blood of their own king to their enemies, the Fómhoraigh knew only terror and fled in a seething panic back into the sea. The Tuireadh had won. Many among the Tuireadh paid the ultimate wage for driving them off. Cath, the druid of Nua of the Silver Hand, was wounded from the deadly blows of the Fómhoraigh, and heart-sick from the death of his king, he wandered away in a daze away southward, overcome with grief. He came to the top of Yellow Pass over the Curlew Mountains. There he sat down to rest, tired from his wounds, tired from his grief, his fear, and the climb. But in his despair, he saw a smooth plain before him, full of flowers. And the memory of a great desire seized his heart to walk among the flowers of the great plain. He drove his tired feet on and on, till he came to its center, and there he gave his last breath. And when the Tuireadh made his grave there, Ireland wept for him too. A lake burst out around him and over the whole of the plain of flowers, and it was given the name in his memory, Loch Kay. It is called Loch Key today. And it stands as a testament and reminder of the sacrifice the Eternal She made to safeguard and protect all life. But one last task remained undone. A few among the Tuireadh, led by Lú, Oghma, and the Daghdha, followed the Fómhoraigh beneath the sea. For the Fómhoraigh still possessed the Daghdha's harp, the harp called Winna. Winna, the oak of two blossoms that sings the four-angled music and sets the seasons in their proper order. Without the harp of the Daghdha, the world would become a fortress of stone where only famine broods. Out into the vast sea they went. They came to a strange land and found a large and ancient feasting hall. After walking in through its massive doorway, they found Bress and his father Allah. And there, hanging on the wall, was the Daghdha's harp. In Winna, the Daghdha had bound the music of the She, so that it couldn't make music till he called it forth. And when he saw it hanging on the wall, the Daghdha sang, "Come summer, come winter, from the mouth of harps and bags and pipes." Then the harp sprang from the wall, came to the Daghdha, and killed 9 of the Fómhoraigh on its way back to his hand. Bress laid down his weapons and said, "It is better for you to spare my life than to kill me. If you spare me now, the cows of Ireland will never go dry." Lú called the druid Meltana Morbreha of the great judgments forward. "I will ask an advice about that from our druids." So he told Meltana of the great judgments what Bress was offering. But Meltana replied, "Do not spare him for that, for he has no power over their offspring, only power as long as they are living." Then Bress says, "If you spare me, the men of Ireland will reap a harvest of corn every quarter." But Meltana replied, "The spring is for plowing and sowing, the summer for the strength of cereals, the autumn for its ripeness, and the winter for its use." Lú turned to Bress, knowing he was still the son of fair Ériú, she who is the land, and said, "That does not save you. Tell us instead, what is the best way for the men of Ireland to plow, sow, and reap?" And Bress replied, "Let their plowing be on a Tuesday, their casting of seed into the field on Tuesday, their reaping on Tuesday." So Lú spared the son of Ériú and let him go free from that day forward. Then the Daghdha played the 3 things all harpers understand: the sleeping tune, the laughing tune, and the crying tune. When he played the crying tune, the most hard-hearted among the Fómhoraigh wept. Then he played the laughing tune, till the strength drained from their legs because of their laughing. Then the good God played the sleeping tune, and all the Fómhoraigh fell into a deep sleep. And during that sleep, the Tuireadh snuck away from the lands of the Fómhoraigh unharmed. When they returned to Ireland with the harp of the Daghdha, the seasons came back into their order, and the good God played the music of Lúnasa. It was over. The Daghdha brought out the glass gavlin, and when the glass gavlin lowed, all the cattle of Ireland came to her side, and one by one, cow after cow emerged from the depths of the sea, for even the cattle the Fómhoraigh had stolen as tribute had heard her call. The many dead of the Tuireadh were buried where they lay. The Tuireadh raised stone pillars and cairns over their dead, just as they had after their war with the Firbolg. And because of the many stones and cairns, the plains around Loch Arrow were named Moytura, the plain of pillars. When the dead were buried, the Morian spoke. She gave the news of the great victory to all the peoples, heights, rivers and peninsulas of the world, saying,
Peace to the sky, sky to the earth, earth beneath sky, strength in all. Cauldron over full, full of honey, abundance in food, summer after winter, spear supported by shield, shield supported by forts, forts ready for battle. Wool from sheep, forests abundant with stags, destruction has departed. Nuts in trees, branches bowing down, bowing from growth. Wealth for children, children of quick minds. Neck of bull, bull of song. Knotted woods for fire, fire when needed. Palisades new and bright from your salmon who shelter in the Boyne. Shelter of shining length, blue growth in spring, horses in autumn, the land held safe. Land recounted with excellence of word, strength to the eternal forests, peace to the sky, be Hishiri, be eternal.
But 4 of the Fómhoraigh remain in the world after the battle, and they still go through the world, spoiling corn, milk, fruit, and the abundance of the sea. They are kept in check every Samhain by the power of the Morian and Nengasog. But life won. Lú, the Tuireadh, the Firwalach, and all life that crawls, walks, swims, and flies was safe. And this is why Lú is held with such great reverence in the hearts of his people. May those who hear these stories be 7 times better than they were before they listened. And for those who pass these stories on, may they remember that they hold the hearth fires of their ancestors in each word. Thanks for listening. We will be starting a new series of stories soon, all about the great hero, Finn McCool. Until then, look for our commentary episode for this show coming up next. Until then, may the people of the Hollow Hills look favorably on you, your family, your friends, and all you undertake. Take care, and Slán Inis.